Right. Yep. My name is Ryan Harris. I'm the Director of Healthcare Technology Management at Texoma Medical Center. We're a 414 bed facility. We have a team of 5 technicians plus myself, and we manage everything from the nurse call system to CT scanners, some X-ray equipment. We try to wrap our hands around as much as we can and to provide that high level of service. So what I'm going to be talking about today is obviously beds in the nurse call system. And when you go into this career or you think about cool things to work on, beds and nurse call may not be your top choice. This might not be something you think about, but they have a huge impact on patient care and patient satisfaction. And so if they're not maintained properly, it's a negative outcome for your hospital. So I'm going to be talking about why I think it's important that we do wrap those into our programs and kind of see the positive light of doing that versus the, I know there's 2 schools of thought about beds and the nurse call system. Sometimes you'll hear that doesn't belong with HTM. Plan Ops takes care of that. It's better through them. Or the IT department might manage your nurse call system. And I'm not here to downplay the effectiveness of either of those departments at any of your facilities. It's just a question to ask yourself, at my facility, who could take care of those things in the best way? So that's just a question to think about. So I'll start off by asking you all, why are we here? That's not the philosophical, theological question. We don't have time to get into all that, but in the hospital, what HTM, why are we there? What's our purpose? What's our mission? What's our goal? Everybody thinks about that. I'm sure you've all considered that before, and we all probably have something similar when it comes to that. But I think our main objective is to ensure that medical equipment is functional and properly maintained. That's essential for patient care. If the devices aren't working or nobody's there to fix them, you're going to have issues. Another thing that we do is some of the departments, where you make yourself different than the just traditional break fix HTM department, is you make sure that the equipment is properly utilized. There's many different ways we do that. We offer suggestions of how they can stop making the same mistake or use the equipment in a way that will help them make their job easier. We might have ideas about things we can add on, updates we can do. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm sure many of you have done that at your facility and brought value there. And then finally, we obviously want to do things with financial awareness. We want to maintain equipment with financial awareness because the bottom line matters, and if you're not paying attention to that piece, your program might be in trouble. The next question I'll ask you all is, can you think of anything that comes in contact the most with the medical device that comes in contact with patients the most when they come in the facility? You probably know what these answers are. A bed, a stretcher, or a nurse call system. Almost every patient that walks in the facility is going to have to use that. And whenever we started maintaining the beds and the nurse call system, I quickly learned that those systems have a direct impact on the patient's experience while they're there. And if they're not working properly, they don't like that, right? If they need help, they want to be able to call and get help. If the bed isn't comfortable or is missing some of its functionality, they're stuck in that thing for 8 hours, 2 days, a long time. If they can't hear the TV, if they can't change the channels, they get very upset. So you got to have effective ways to make that system work. So when you consider what our mission is in the HTM career field, what your goals are, and then the fact that equipment is touched by almost every patient, I think the answer is clear about who should maintain that, and it's us. Like I said, I'm not here to claim that we're better than any other department. What I do know is that most of us are wired in a way that we are always curious and we want to help. We want to make sure that the caregivers have all the tools that they need, and we like to integrate things in a way that helps them. So what I'm going to get into is a few things that we've done. You can help nursing immensely and improve patient care just by maintaining the beds in the nurse call system. You can justify to increase your staff size by doing beds, and you can solidify your staff. And what I mean by that is when you're doing a core function like bed maintenance and nurse call maintenance, it's not as easy for administration or, let's think about the pandemic. I know that some hospitals were faced with the unfortunate circumstances of having to furlough employees or lay people off. If I'm the guy in administration that has to make that decision and I'm laying off the people that maintain my beds in the nurse call system, how can I say, let's take away one of those HTM people? I can't do that. We have a hospital surging with patients. How are we going to say, don't fix the beds anymore, or have to come up with a different solution, an alternative solution that would be cheaper? I mean, if you did that, it would be more expensive because you have to hire somebody to come and do it. So, one of the arguments that I've heard before is that they're not advanced. They're not that technologically advanced for us to have to take them on. Other people can handle that. So I don't buy into that. I have seen how advanced the beds have become. They're not the same as they were, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I've got a guy on my team who worked on CTs for 15, 20 years. And even he sometimes on an ICU bed, he can be stuck and scratch his head for a few hours. It's like, we're not above this technology. It's advanced. And finally, I'm going to explain some ways that we save money by doing them ourselves. So to start off, one of the first things we got into when we took over the beds was integration to the nurse call system. And we had started working on the beds, and I would be in meetings like the EOC meeting, patient safety council meetings, and the topic of patient falls would come up. If any of you are in leadership roles at your hospital, you hear they're always trying to come up with creative ways to reduce falls or keep that figure down, the fall rate. So a question I asked to the groups is like, why aren't we connecting the beds to our nurse call system? And the answer that I got was, it doesn't work. We can't do that. We already tried. And I never got to the bottom of who told them it wouldn't work or why they told them it wouldn't work. But the first thing that I wanted to do is, and many of you are probably the same way, when somebody tells me that won't work, I want to go see if I can make it work, right? See if you can figure it out. That's a challenge. That's a puzzle. That's what we enjoy in this career field. So it didn't take us long to figure out that it does work. If it's done, you got to hook it up properly. You got to get the right cable. You have to set the alarm, and it does work. So my team helped to implement all the cables and the connectivity to the nurse call system. We wrapped it into our PMs. It coincided with our PM cycle in such a way that we were able to make that part of the PM, and on our task, we just put a cable on all the beds. And then after we did that, months went by. They were trying to use the bed exit alarm to monitor patients getting up out of bed. And we were in a meeting. I can't remember if it was the patient safety council or what meeting it was, but one of the leading med-surg directors, she was being confronted with some people in this meeting were saying that, I think we can do more. I don't think we have a lot of nurses trying to connect the beds. I think there's room for improvement there. So she said, you know, it just doesn't work. It's confusing. We don't understand how to do it. And she kind of had this like negative, I'm sure you've all been there before. They just kind of throw their hands up and don't want to put in the effort. I shouldn't say that, just they're confused, okay? So after the meeting, I asked her specifically, I'm like, what do you mean it's complicated? Like, what do you mean it's too confusing or that it doesn't work? There's too many, what are you talking about? So she tried to explain it to me, and I'm a visual person. I'm like, you know what, let's go up to one of your rooms. I want you to show me what you're talking about. What are you having trouble with? So I go up there, and in her hand, she has this cable. Actually, it was the longer cable, but it had one of these attached on the side. And I'll never forget this experience. It was a defining moment in my career because, you know, there's some people in our industry that they can develop a negative connotation with nurses or with clinicians, that they think they don't care. We tell them how to do these things over and over. They're just negligent. They don't want to put in the effort to do it the right way. And they like I said, they develop this negative association with nurses, and they're like, they look at it as, you know, I keep having to go up there and fix this. I've told them what to do. They just don't get it. They don't care. So I've always tried not to fall victim to that. It's easy sometimes to get frustrated with them, but the way I like to think about it is, you know, we're there because they need us as technical experts. They know how to take care of patients. That's their job. They can connect on an emotional level with the patient in ways that I don't understand, or that I don't that's not me. And so some of them, not all of them, need us for the equipment side and to help them, right? So I know this, I already knew that, but she held the cable up in front of my face and looked me dead in the eye and said, which one do we plug in? What do I plug into the wall? See this right here? Is this what I'm supposed to plug into the wall? And it was at that moment I realized she's not trying to be funny. She wasn't trying to pull my leg. She honestly did not understand that this has no association or connective path to the wall, right? And all of you take one look at that. You know that. You can tell that's just a tether, right? So that the thing doesn't get lost. But it's things like that that clear example made me realize they honestly need our help sometimes, and they're not trying to be difficult. They need us there. They need us to be the technical experts, right? So if we're not doing that, who's going to do it? So after all that, you know, we still to this day, we've been doing this for 4 years now at least. You never get over all of these issues. Some of them are going to need reminders, right? After we got them all to figure out how to hook it up, just to hook it up to the wall, they wanted to know, okay, it's kind of complicated. We need help learning how to set the alarm. Some of them were zeroing the scale with the patient still in the bed, right? So that seems like a no-brainer to us as technical people, but don't assume that they know what that is, right? And it's not a knock on their abilities. It's just they need help sometimes. So we developed an instructional document that could be spread throughout the facility to kind of help that, and it did help them. And we also do on-the-spot education, and like I said, that never stops. You've got to get in front of the individuals that have the issues. You can do all you want with telling their managers or spreading out documents like I just showed you, but you're always going to need that face-to-face communication sometimes with the individual people. So for the nurse call system, you know, I've talked about the beds a lot. Now let's talk about nurse call for a second. After we took that on, I started getting requests to make changes to our system. Like, you know, every now and then there'll be a code blue and it only rings at this one phone down here, and they actually wanted to ring at these others this way. And for whatever reason over the years, nobody has ever realized that was going on. So I would call our nurse call distributor and request that they come out to make a change. And even though, you know, when something has been that way for 2 years, now that you know it's an issue and you know there might be a delayed response, you want it done immediately. You don't want to wait till next week. And sometimes we were told, you know, the best we can do is get out there next Tuesday. And that doesn't make it easy for guys like, or people like us to sleep at night, right? Those are the kind of things we think about at night. What's going to happen if this goes off again and I knew about it and they couldn't get out here until Tuesday? That's not what we want. So I decided, you know, let's take the programming into our own hands. Why can't we do that? It did take some training and a lot of reading, right, to make sure that we knew that we weren't going to mess up some of the programming on our nurse call system. But I don't need to explain the importance of that to you guys. We do that every day. If we want to take something on, we got to make sure we do it right. But when you do your own nurse call programming, you've got the ability to make changes immediately when you need them, if they're urgent. So this is a little thing we made to have in the shop that we can test components with. But one of the, back to the bed integration, one of the complaints that we would hear, see, I keep talking about complaints, right? We all face that. When we want to do things, it's almost like they always have a thing to say, what about this? You know, now we have this problem. And instead of looking at it as a negative thing, let's make that a puzzle or a challenge in a way that we can help, right? But they would say, this bed alarm sound that's created on our nurse call system, we can't tell the difference between that and a regular nurse call. It's very similar, and there is no unique message that displays on the console. So even though it's alarming, we don't really know that it's a bed exit, and we need to get in there quick. So I found out that, well, we can change the sound. We didn't have a wide palette of sounds to choose from, but we did have a unique sound that we could use. We also had a way to create a custom pattern on the corridor light. So we made that, and we also made a message that would display on the phone that said bed alarm. And I showed the leaders what we had come up with, and they thought it was a good thing. So this coincided with our competency carnival. I'm sure a lot of you have some kind of annual thing where the nurses all have to go through a litany of training exercises or things that they're exposed to. So we put this in there, and we showed them, look, this is an upcoming change that's going to be made on your system. You know, anytime you're going to do something like this with changing a sound on a life safety system like that, you want to make sure you get the word out to as many people, right? Because these sounds they're ingrained within those nurses. Like they've been hearing it for years, and they're going to have a new sound in the mix now. It's going to ruffle some feathers and kind of freak them out a little bit at first. So I wanted to do everything that we could to get the message out that this is going to be a change, right? So they all had to go see this. And we spread communication throughout every avenue you can think of. But we all know that you do that, and inevitably there will be people. We did the implementation, but there were still people that didn't know that this was the new change, and they quickly found out about what this sound was. And a lot of them were also concerned because it sounded too much like the staff assist call. And I went up and listened to the difference. I had already heard the difference through the programming that we did. It's not that it sounded like the staff assist call, it's that before we did this, there was no other urgent call on the system. You know, the standard nurse call tone isn't so loud as a code blue or a staff assist would be. Well, this alarm was an urgent sound. It was urgent because it needs to be. What good is a bed exit alarm going to do you if it's kind of like in the background, like, oh, you barely even hear it, right? No, they need to get up and go. It needs to be an in-your-face type alarm. And it was a unique sound, and they got used to it. We did not change back or get rid of it. It's still there to this day being used. So after that, we got that all going. Another challenge that we faced at my facility was bed logistics, storage, tracking, just the whole bed process of how you know, do you guys have a process at your facility? A lot of the hospitals where I worked, this was kind of like a no man's land or a gray zone where it was just kind of like the Wild West, right? Everybody has their own idea of how it's supposed to work, but there's not a process. How do you know where the beds are? What do we do with the extra bed when we have one? We want it off our floor. It's in the hallway. It's blocking the egress. We don't want it over here. You know, who moves it? So I would hear about these complaints over and over again in the leadership meetings and just this ongoing dispute about something that didn't even really have a process to begin with. It was just everybody's opinion. So I asked my CNO if she would back me up, if I could come up with a process that we could use to make this better. And I kind of told her my rough draft idea, and she said yes, she would support me. And once I had that support, I started, and my team, we started working on a process to have a way to track the beds and know where they are. We established locations on each floor. You know, they all had alcove space that they could put equipment, but they all got to do whatever they wanted with that alcove space. Well, now that I had the CNO's support, which I think something like this can never happen unless you have that somebody administration that's actually going to enforce this, because you're going up against individual department leaders that have their own ideas of what their alcove space should be for, right? They all have arguments. I need mine for this. You know, we have all this stuff over here that we need to keep, and it's unique. Well, the CNO said, no, you guys are all going to have a location on your floor, 2 locations, one for a foam mattress, one for an air mattress on the med-surg floors. So we got posters put up. I got with my marketing department to make sure that it was appropriate. It wasn't something that they were going to make us take down the road. And in my facility, they're which is a good thing, they're big on the way things look, right? They don't want just some little sign that says put a bed here hanging on the wall. So I'll show you what that poster looked like in a second. Another thing that my team helped with is we color coded the beds to show what type of bed it was by looking at the wheel, the frame down there at the bottom. There's a little color coded bar, and it tells them what type of surface the bed has and what kind of bed it is. And then every day in the leadership meetings, the departments are required to report if they have a bed in their location or not, because we have a few more locations than we do beds, and sometimes more beds are in use than not, or more beds will be broken, so they may not have a spot. But this allowed everybody to have a picture of, okay, the 8th floor has no beds, but you know, the 4th floor has a bed in their hallway that needs to get moved, so that's where we can put it, so that there's a way for them to see that. Another something that I would hear sometimes is, you know, we've got these beds in the hall and we never know if they're broken or not. Maybe it's in the hall, maybe somebody put it there because it's broken. How do I know? I don't want to go take that bed because it might be broken. And they would say, you know, or a bed would have a little napkin on it that says broken, and it's been sitting there for 2 weeks, and they're wondering, is this being worked on? Do you guys even know it's broken? And I said, look, if you put in a work order to us when my team comes up to look at that bed, if we can't fix it on the spot, we'll put a little form on it that has the status. That way you know what's going on, and you can check the status of that work order by looking it up. We have an online database that the nurses have access to. They can check it there, or they can call us. But that way they knew what was going on. It was also a way for me and my team to know, have we already looked at this bed? Because if we're walking around or we see a broken form on a bed, it was also for our benefit. And the other picture there, that's a poster that Hillrom helped us create for showing all the color-coded labels that we came up with and what beds we put them on. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is a way that, so if any of you are already doing the beds in the nurse call at your hospital, it didn't take me long to realize, and I'm sure you already have too, that a lot of the our equipment damage numbers went up. You know, I'm sure you all, some of you track the damage and abuse failure coded items, but mine kind of went through the roof when we started documenting all of this stuff. And a lot of it is due to the fact that beds are moved around a lot. They get moved out of the rooms, and sometimes they forget to unplug all the stuff that's hooked up to them, right? If any of you have ever moved a bed out of a room, you may have even done that, right? We can do that too. We try not to, and we preach not to do that, but if you've been in a hurry or you've got something else on your mind, you may have done that. So, and we tried, the first thing I did was try to educate, right? Get the word out. Hey, make sure you unplug everything. Sometimes that falls on deaf ears. Sometimes people don't hear it. So I was just racking my brain, you know, how do I get this damage down at all? Like, what else can I do? The only thing I could come up with is to figure out, why are the beds moving in the first place? Now, I understand sometimes you have to transport a patient on a bed. If it's a critical patient in the ICU, or they just came out of a heart surgery, they're not going to put them in a wheelchair, right? They have to move on a bed. So I'm not talking about those bed movements. I'm talking about the movements that happen go down to radiology, or to go somewhere where they're not so critical, but nobody, either they don't know where to get a wheelchair, or they don't have a wheelchair around. So instead they just say, you know what, get them out of here, take them on the bed. That was really the only area that I could find to help improve. So when I met with leadership about this specific topic, about bed movement, and I asked them all, you know, are we moving beds? Are they always being done when they do they always have to be on a bed, or are we moving them sometimes when they don't need to be? And we didn't have any data to look at. We didn't have any visibility on it. Everybody just kind of had opinions, right? Some of them thought we were already doing the best we could, and others said, you know, sometimes we can't find a wheelchair, or it just seems like the quickest, easiest way to do it. So the first step that we had to come up with was, how do we track this? How do we see it? So we were able to add a column, or 3 columns in a section for transport method. So then I would go around and collect all the transport logs, make a copy. That way I had some data to look at and see which areas are moving the beds the most. Like, whenever they go to the OR, it seems like they always go on a bed. Okay. It just gave us a way to track it and see it and make sure that we were cutting down on as much of it as we could. So let's talk about the bed mattress. Have any of you ever looked inside a bed mattress, or underneath the mattress at your hospital? Yeah, the FDA released a notice on mattress contamination back in 2013 and again in 2017, and basically it's saying we see this as a potential risk throughout many hospitals. And when you think about it, it seems pretty obvious, right? That it could be a breeding ground for bacteria, or biological growth. But it's also something that might be a gray area, right? Or might be a overlooked section. Who's looking at it? Who's checking it? Who's making sure that the mattress topper is not cut or has a little hole in it? Is anybody checking that? ECRI also put it as a top 10 health technology hazard for 2018. Does your facility have a process for inspecting the mattress? Whose responsibility is that? At most facilities, that would probably be the answer, right? But there's a difference between who's supposed to do it and who actually does it, or do they really do it, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's right. So just think about that at your facility. Who's checking this? Like Alejandro was saying, it's part of the inspection process. So this is one more way we can help, right? If we're checking the beds, at least annually, somebody's looking at the mattress to make sure that if it needs to be replaced, it gets replaced. I put on here that mattress breakdown equals patient dissatisfaction because, folks, I don't know if these kind of complaints come to you, but at my hospital, if there's a problem with equipment and the patient complained or put in a complaint, I do see those. So early on, when we started doing the beds, I would get these complaints that a patient was sleeping on the frame was the bed frame, the air had gone out of the mattress basically, and they were sleeping on a frame, or there was a divot in the middle of the foam mattress, and now their back is hurt. That they know that it took them a while for their back to stop hurting, and the foam mattresses that we have, like he mentions, they have a recommended replacement interval. So I mean, a lot of stuff has a recommended replacement interval, and it's up to us to decide. You know, I don't know how your programs run, if you have some things on an AEM or if everything is done by the manufacturer's recommendation. But this is one of the things that I decided, look, we are going to go by the manufacturer's recommendation because I think it's important to have a comfortable mattress for the patient that's laying in that bed for a few days. But this is just something to think about, the contaminated mattress, and is there a process for mattress replacements, because they don't last forever. And some of your facilities, if you're not managing the beds, or if you just started, you might have some foam mattresses or any other type of mattress that hasn't ever been replaced since you bought the bed. You know, it could be 10 years old, could be 8 years old. Is that the best surface for that patient? Well, that's a funny thing you ask, Chris, because we don't really have to worry about that on the foam mattress side for a while. As you may remember, we got a gift. Well, I wouldn't call it a gift, but we have some extra foam mattresses for my facility. So that's an expense that we have yet to have to really absorb. But now that at my facility, it's in our budget. We pay for the mattress if it needs to be replaced on a stretcher or a bed. A lot of times, you know, they just need a new mattress cover, and we'll do that. So that does come into my cost center. Sure. She asked, how do we track warranties on the new mattresses and the mattress covers? So one thing that we do, we write the date on the tag of the mattress. That way we know when it was installed. But they actually do on the beds we have, they print the date on the tag, but after a couple years, or if they're cleaning that, it might actually fade away. So we started writing on there with a Sharpie of what the date was. That way we know. So we're talking about mattresses. I'll stay on that for a second because when you talk about an air mattress, the ones we have throughout our facility, the med-surg facilities, the departments, they have what's called a low air loss feature, and it's constantly blowing air across the surface to wick away moisture and prevent skin breakdown. And so there's a motor that's always running, and sometimes patients don't want to hear that, or they don't like that. And if the nurse doesn't know what that's for, what that motor is, she can't explain to the patient, this is for your own benefit, sir or ma'am, this is so that, it's helping. They might think there's a problem with the bed. They might put in a work order and say the motor is constantly running. Sometimes on an air mattress, I mentioned the zeroing of the scale. If you don't have an accurate weight in the bed, that's what the bed is using to pressurize different areas of the mattress. So it's all about that weight. So if the clinicians don't know how to do all this and set it up correctly, it can lead to a lot of patient complaints about the comfort or the fact that they have to hear this motor all the time. Somebody needs to tell them about what it's for. And that's where we can come in and help them to educate. Sometimes they wouldn't know how to tell quickly if it's an air or a foam mattress, or who needs an air versus a foam mattress. And a lot of this stuff, it's not just us that's going to educate them. You can look at your work orders and study the trends to see, okay, we need to bring our vendor in here and maybe do some in-service on, like, showing them what each one is for, what each surface does. And that's constant. They need to be refreshed every now and then on all that. So, one thing I do every month is I look at all the corrective maintenance work orders that come in, and any of them that are user training required or could not duplicate the issue. Those are clues, right, that you may have an overall problem in certain areas. If there's one device type where you have all these user errors or things that your technicians are coding as that they couldn't reproduce the problem, that's a clue that you've got an issue that you need to look into. And that's it with the beds particularly. That has been very helpful to make sure that I can keep my finger on the pulse of how they're using the beds, and are they using them properly. When I looked, I did this to customize and tailor some training specifically for what we needed. So I look at the work orders, and I saw a lot of confusion out there about the air mattress. And sometimes, there's a setting that ours have that you can have it in max inflate. Is that the best? Is that the best for the patient? If the patient complains about the air mattress, I keep talking about this. If they have nobody to explain them how it works, or if the nurses don't know how it works, of course they're just going to hit that max inflate button, but then the patient's not getting the best treatment. So I looked at the work orders to come up with a few things that I thought we needed to focus on with our vendor, and then she was able to be at the competency carnival and show every single nurse that came through there how to zero the scale, how to do some of these things that we were struggling with. Yes.
Also, things have an HTM environmental engineer. It is our responsibility to get input to that. These beds they're capable of doing their job. And like he was saying, patients touch the bed, majority, we're probably not there standing in bed. And these beds provide quality care. That's part of our job, is providing quality care. And doing that is providing insurance to the staff and let them know how to operate. Because sometimes when we get a book and could not be so. Why is that? Because that's what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. What is it? More times than not, it's because the staff doesn't know how to operate the bed. Things so simple because it's a bed, but there's a lot of functions that provide, benefit to the patient.
Yep.
To be able to
Thank you, Landon. He's exactly right. I don't, and when they come out of education, orientation, I'm sure they take a course, an online course about all of this, but if they don't have guys like Landon at the hospital to show them every day, I just don't know that it ever sinks in. Another thing we did, we were able to, I'm able to help the falls. You know, we have a falls committee whose whole objective is to decrease patient falls. So you can use your work orders to highlight certain departments that have issues over and over again with, they might be putting in all these work orders that say the bed exit alarm on the bed doesn't work. And then we go and say, actually, we could not duplicate that. We plugged it in, it works as expected. That's a clue for them to, their leader might need more education, or their team might need education on that. If, you know, a lot of us over this past year, I'm sure a lot of you are faced with challenges. You had to make changes quickly, kind of adapt to the situation. And many of you probably had hospitals where you were looking for anywhere to put a patient that you could on any surface that you could. So every single bed and stretcher was vital to your operation. And if you have an in-house bed maintenance program, one thing we had to do a couple days, and Landon is on my team, he can speak to this, but we were able to focus all of our resources. You know, everybody get off what you're doing, get as many beds fixed as you can. We didn't have a huge pile up of beds. We were in a pretty good place, but you guys understand the amount of work we have never stops. It never goes away. We simply have to decide, is this something that I have to do today, or can I do this next week? So beds, if you have extra beds at your facility, sometimes they will be the thing that you put off till next week, right? So that's what we had done, and that's what we kind of always roll like that. But we were able to quickly fix beds that had issues and needed maybe a part that we already had in stock, and we immediately ordered any parts needed for the few that we couldn't fix. But we got, I would say, 90% of the broken beds that we had back in use within a day, just by doing simple repairs and focusing our efforts on them only. So, yep. Well, so back in 2016, we were a contracted biomed team at my hospital, and they dropped that contract. So we started an in-house program, and I had the opportunity to come face to face with the man who would be leading that up, and he's right back there, and his name's Chris Nowak. And one of the things I wanted to talk to him about is, you know, what's the expectation for this program? What are we going to be doing? If I stay here, what am I getting myself into? So I was asking him specifically about device types, and one that I asked him about was beds, and he said he would expect that with the FTE staff that I had. So we went from 2 FTEs up to 4 with me as the director when we took the beds. But we also were expected to do many more things now, like imaging, get our hands in imaging stuff. But I was given that initial surge of FTEs, and it helped. I'm going to show you in a second a little table that I made to kind of help you guys gauge. If you're not already doing beds, maybe this will help you get an idea of what it would require from an FTE perspective. And that's that right here. So I have a 414 bed facility, and what this is, it's a 24-month view of the data from our CMMS. So here are the totals for 24 months. These are the hours we spent on each device you see there. I divided that by 24 to come up with this, and then you have I took an FTE, which 160 hours a month, if I'm not mistaken. I took that and came up with this figure that tells me what's my annual FTE per device type? And that's what I'm looking at my facility. And then I went a step beyond that to say, okay, how many is that per licensed bed? That way I could come up with this table and give you guys a view. And of course, this is a generic tool here. How you maintain your beds and your nurse call may not align with what we're doing, but after all these things I've talked about, this is kind of what ours looks like. I was a little bit surprised when I did this analysis, because if you ask me how many FTEs do you guys use for beds and nurse call, I would have thought it was closer to 1. But it's in reality, it's about, if one guy's working on beds, nurse call, stretchers, half a day, every day, every working day is what we're looking at. So it's not a full FTE. And you might be asking yourself, well, how good is this data? Is it all captured there? Is your people's time? Landon can attest to the way we document, and we have Chris Nowak to make sure that he's big on that, and you all I'm sure are too, right? We're only as good as what is in our database. If we don't document it, it didn't get done. And if you're not documenting things correctly, you're not giving your leadership the right tools they need to make the best decisions for the department. We need accurate documentation, and the way you're spending your time is crucial. My team knows that. They are very good at making sure they capture all their time in a work order, accurate depictions of their time. So, I mean, I stand behind this view at my facility. So. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's just a general view. We have some older critical care beds that really suck up a lot of our time. They really do. So you spend more time on those than some of the med surge beds. But you're right. It depends on what kind of beds you have, right? So that it's just a rule of thumb there. And then last, I'll talk about a contract. What about a contract? At my facility, over the past 4 years, we saved approximately $250,000. It comes up to like 249 something, I can't remember. And that's true savings. That's got the parts taken out of it. That has our labor costs taken out of it. That's pure savings right there. So obviously, it's cheaper to service beds in-house than it is to have a contract or time and materials approach. Another thing to ask yourself, if you want to be on a contract, say that's fine, that's what we're going to do. How often are they going to be there? How many of them will come? Will they be there to talk to all those nurses that an in-house HTM team that's there every day and up on the floors every day doing other things can stop in and say, hey, I saw a work order that you put in for a bed as well. I can show you how to do that correctly. Are they going to be able to do that like we can? They could if they threw enough resources at it, sure, they could, but will they is the question. So can they provide that same level of support? That's just something to think about. Right.
And they go around Texas, more than happy to come in and repair it. And Brian got frustrated. I said, this is frustrating to me. And he wound up getting so on corporate involved. They sent somebody out from North Carolina. And here there was a problem with one of them crashing.
Yeah.
The service is
yeah. 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 And I'm not here to bash Hillrom. I actually like Hillrom as a vendor. I think they're one of the more cooperative vendors. If you call Hillrom with a question about a bed, they're not going to say, oh, can't talk to you, you're not trained. can't share that information. They're very helpful, and we also have good relationships with them. But like Chris was saying, and this goes across the board to all vendors. You know, we had a discussion. Dave was talking about, you know, the service industry and what it looks like, the challenges with this the FDA, things that are going on. You all know good and well, we have a sense of ownership with the things that we do and the equipment that we service, right? Do the vendors that come in, do they care about our equipment? I mean, I shouldn't say they don't care about our equipment. There's just not that same level of ownership, right? If it's to them, they go to different places all the time, and they want to do their best, but at the end of the day, it's our equipment. So I feel like we have a little bit more of that ownership when we work on it, and that helps. That helps. But yeah, we do have challenges like that. And if there's not technical experts at the hospital that think, you know, this doesn't make any sense. You're telling me this, but I know very well that couldn't be the case. And even when you have guys like us telling them that, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 of those conversations before they do anything. So how is that going to happen if we're not there? Who's going to have that conversation, right? It's not going to it won't happen. And so that problem might take place over and over again for who knows how long and may not ever be addressed. So you're right. That's exactly right. So I'll open it up now for any questions or comments. You know, I'm not trying to act like I have this all figured out. If anybody's got an idea or a way that you help your facility with beds that I didn't touch on, please let's hear it.